Yo, what's going on, everybody? It's your boy Naruto Explained here, bringing you guys a review for Boruto Chapter 44. And after following last week's hype moment with Boruto going into the Otsutsuki clan transformation, defeating Boro, the story picks up just after that, and oh my god, is there a lot to unpack here. There's a lot to unpack, and I gotta go ahead and start off with the ending. I was not expecting Amado on top of Kashin Koji to make the betrayal. I said last month, I said that with Amado, it seemed like he and Kashin Koji were working together, but I didn't think that it would go as far as Amado actually coming to the Hidden Leaf Village, offering information to betray Kara, offering information to betray Jigen, and letting Naruto know that there's a Ten Tails there, because Sasuke's not told that to Naruto yet. So this is gonna be news to Naruto. Like, this is gonna be huge next chapter. Like, it really feels as if, and I might be jumping the gun here, but it really feels as if what Kodachi is doing here is he's rushing what's going on with Kara in order to pave the way for an even bigger threat. And if that's what's gonna happen, this is a very nice segue. This is a very nice segue, because the way that Amado was building this up with this type of intel, it's almost like he's building it up towards an end game. And I think that what that end game is going to be is not the end game of the Boruto series, but the end game of the time skip. I feel like every chapter that we're getting so far is just making it clearer and clearer and clearer that we're going to be getting a time skip sooner rather than later. It would not surprise me if that time skip happened this year. It would not surprise me at all. It's probably sometime right before Jump Fiesta. That way they can make the announcement at Jump Fiesta in December of this year. But again, that's kind of my thought on that, because from a business perspective, it makes a lot of sense. But dude, I gotta give it to Kodachi on this one. This was not a chapter that had a bunch of action in it. There wasn't a lot of action, but there was a lot of conflict there. And this is what I mean when I say you don't need a lot of melodrama. You don't need a lot of fighting in order to make moments like this, moments that some people would consider to be slowed down, slice of life moments, in order to make a chapter feel good, rich with tension, because we got it in so many different ways. Whether it be the conversation that Katasuke and Sumire had with Kawaki about how Kawaki's body is rejecting the scientific ninja arm, how the nano machines in his body are acting up, and how Kawaki is in terrible pain. It makes you look at Kawaki from a different perspective. You also see how Kawaki, in a very subtle way, is hinting at all the experiments that his body went through with the Kara organization, where he's telling Sumire, like, hey, the stuff that I've been through, my body is not built to die or be destroyed easily. It's just something that I learned to live with, which implies that Kawaki very well could have been experiencing this pain long before he even came to Konoha. He just learned to deal with it. And then the other thing is, it's like you have that moment where she tries to give him the pain injector, and Kawaki refuses because he says it's going to dull his senses, and that hints at the fact that Kawaki has essentially been drugged. And I gotta say this, like, just the little small details like that is some excellent storytelling. It tells you so much about the characters without actually having to say it. Like I've talked about in the past about, you know, good series show you without actually having to tell you. In this case, they did. Boruto's writer Kodachi did a little bit of both here, okay? He had Kawaki tell us what he went through, but he didn't go into detail. But because of the flashback that we had before, and because of how the different members of Kara have reacted around him, and how they've spoken of him, and how Jigen views him, we're able to put the pieces together. I love it when it's stuff like that, because it's not insulting our intelligence. So I thought that that was a nice bit of writing right there. The other thing I thought was really good is how, again, more conflict is being added to a situation where Amado and Kashin Koji, they get confronted by Delta, and then in so many different ways it gets revealed to us that Amado might very well be in a position to double cross Kashin Koji again, because Koji even says like, hey, you know, he could still betray me. I didn't know that he could do something like this with Delta's body. When you have that moment where Shikadai is being held hostage, how Amado is able to control the bomb he has around Shikadai's neck. So many different layers of tension. Now that one more so was one of those moments where, yes, there was a little bit of action there, but they also introduced the ticking clock. Like, this is why I say, I catch shit about this from time to time, but this is why I say when Kodachi is a really good writer, because one other thing he did in this instance is he introduced the ticking clock, because we know that Jigen's body's going to be out for at least 48 hours. That's the thing that Amado told Jigen. When Shikadai gets that bomb around his neck, he says, hey, you know, this bomb might go off in 48 hours. It depends on what Shikamaru does. We don't have time to chit chat. He's building on that ticking clock. When Jigen fully recovers, if Kashin Koji has not killed him, whenever Jigen fully recovers, there's gonna be a major bombshell, because that's the whole reason you introduce a ticking clock. Like, they're building up towards it. When you have Shikamaru stating that Jigen can come to Konoha at any given moment, like, that in itself is letting you know, like, Kodachi is going to be ramping this up to another level, and I gotta hope that when that happens, Ikimoto's going to be on this A game. And I gotta give him this, like, I butchered him to high hell last week, okay? I butchered him to high hell, and you know, it pissed off, you know, quite a few vocal minority people, and I addressed that in a video at the very beginning, you know, just talking about my background on being an editorial assistant, my background on studying the art of the graphic novel, and studying basically all the little small things that go into writing a comic book and looking at paneling, all this stuff. So that's why I take the approach I do on these chapter reviews. After being so critical of Ikimoto in the last chapter review, I gotta say on this one, right? Like, there were still some moments where I was like, damn, man, I wish that, you know, he would kind of go further. But then he had moments in this chapter where I sat back and I applauded the guy, okay? Like, in particular, there's this one scene where you have Amado, where he walks in on the Ina Shikacho trio training, and he's getting confronted, and you just see him with his hand down by his side, and then you see in the next panel how he starts to move his fingers up a little bit, and then you see the actual scientific ninja tool weapon slide down. You see Shikadai's immediate reaction, and then you see the sound waves going off on it and how they're slowly spreading out, and then they reach out to Shikadai. Like that right there, that's what I mean when I say slow down the panels a little bit and capture more of those details. A lot of people are like, oh my god, this is gonna kill the pacing. That did not kill the pacing in the scene. There are a few panels like that in this chapter where I applaud it, because I know that takes extra time, and I'm a lot more critical on Ikimoto for that, just for the fact that he doesn't give us the full amount of pages that a monthly chapter does, and he doesn't give us the full amount of pages that a weekly mangaka gives you over the course of a month. So I mean, that's one of those things where, yes, I was gonna be more critical, but when he has chapters like this where all of a sudden throughout multiple pages he's using more than 4 fucking panels, and he's actually giving you detail, and he's actually focusing more on making the art more dynamic in those little small moments, I gotta give the guy props on that. I gotta give him props. Like, this was good from a art standpoint. You know, it wasn't just Ikimoto being carried by Kodachi's writing. So I thought that this was good. Now, the other thing I kind of want to touch on now is when it comes to Naruto, right? Like, so I've had a few people reach out to me and say, hey, why is Naruto back up and running like he is? And I think that this comes back to the fact that I think some people are forgetting that Naruto's durability actually increased following the Fourth Shinobi World War. Okay, so the reason why you see Naruto all of a sudden just hopping around and running around back at full duty, and you got people like Kawaki saying like, Jesus, this guy is a monster. The reason why is Naruto now has both halves of the QB inside of him, on top of chakra from all the other 8 Biju. So he has chakra from all 9 Biju, the other half of the QB, and he has Hashirama cells. Naruto's stamina has increased a lot. I gotta say, I like that moment how, you know, you see Kawaki and he's just drawn with this very, very beautiful expression on his face where you just see this whole weight being lifted off of him, and you can see it in real time. Like, that's what I mean when I say Ikimoto did a better job this chapter conveying emotion. I really fucking mean it. I really mean it. Like, in the same page, you see Kawaki looking down over to the side. You see more emphasis on the lines on his face. He isn't making eye contact, and then when Boruto shows up and says that Naruto feels better, you just see the lines around his face drawn a little bit differently. Not a lot, but they're drawn a little bit differently, and he's looking up and making eye contact in that moment. Like, this was good. And I like how just on the next page, again, Ikimoto slowed things down and he gave us more. He played with the layout a little bit. It's still rectangles and squares, but what I'll give him is the fact that, you know, when he slowed it down, we saw more of the facial reactions. And what I like about in this moment is the fact that you actually see Naruto sticking up for Boruto and his classmates. Shikamaru is right. These guys basically went rogue, and it's actually ironic given that Naruto's making excuses now, but in the anime, they ripped Sarada a new a-hole for basically going off with Boruto on that Misaki retrieval arc. They ripped Sarada for that, but now Naruto's condoning it. Now, I will say this is a different scenario. The Hokage needed to be rescued, and Naruto's like, hey, look, you're right. Under normal circumstances, this would be a really bad idea. But yo, they saved my ass, Shikamaru. We're gonna give them a pass. I like that right there. And I gotta say, this moment right here, this just shows you the difference. Like, Naruto as Hokage is going to give a little bit more wiggle room. Shikamaru as Hokage is going to be a bit sterner, and he's going to be a bit more analytical. And I like to put it like this. There was something that got said very recently about Bill Belichick when it comes to football, about the difference with Bill Belichick and Bill Parcells. So a lot of you guys know that I'm a huge New York Giants fan. Okay, I'm going to keep this short because I know a lot of you guys don't like sports. I'm going to keep this very short, but a lot of you guys know I'm a huge New York Giants fan. When Bill Belichick served as our defensive coordinator, Bill Parcells was the coach. All the players, they love Bill Parcells. Bill Parcells is just like Naruto, right? Like, Naruto can be stern when he needs to, but at the same time, Bill Parcells is more of a people guy. He's able to connect. He's able to talk and just kind of get the most out of people just from being around him. Being around Bill Parcells made those players want to play harder. Whereas with somebody like Shikamaru and Bill Belichick, they're very analytical. When you deal with analytics, you're very cold. You see things more matter of the fact. That's how Shikamaru saw Kawaki saying, we can't trust you. You show up and all this shit starts happening. Now Naruto's missing. I ain't having none of this shit. And when you look at how Naruto and Shikamaru are interacting, it reminds me of the story that we saw on the top 100 players thing that they did for the NFL, and you have this moment where Bill Belichick's telling the story of how Lawrence Taylor, so LT, one of the greatest New York Giants to ever play football, one of the greatest defensive players in football history, mind you. Bill Belichick's talking about the fact that he was holding a meeting and LT came in late, and he went to Bill Parcells and wanted Parcells to reprimand LT. And Bill Parcells just joked with him and said, well, he was 5 minutes late. What's the problem? You should have just started the meeting 5 minutes later when LT showed up. Don't start the meeting without him. That's kind of how Naruto's taking the approach. He's like, look, when we were kids, we screwed up all the time. There's no way that we can hold them to a standard that we didn't even hold ourselves to. Yeah, I like this changing in the dynamic between the two characters. I thought that this was really, really good. I thought that basically Kodachi gave us a good idea that yes, Shikamaru is ready to be Hokage, but there's some elements of the character, because he's gotten more serious, and I've talked about this in videos on the channel about how the war and how what happens in the Shikamaru Heat and novel, A Cloud Drifting Silent in the Sky, those events changed Shikamaru greatly. That's why I'm doing videos talking about that novel, because the anime did not properly showcase to you guys the major change that Shikamaru goes through, and you actually see it in this chapter and you see it in the previous chapters, just how much Shikamaru's changed. So I thought that this was good. I thought that this was really good. Now, I gotta give it up to this, right? The idea of Kashin Koji using the toad, I'm so glad that we actually get the confirmation that it's a toad, right? Because from the moment Kashin Koji showed up, I had a lot of people telling me that Kashin Koji wasn't using a toad. So, and I gotta say this, like, I like that scene with Kashin Koji where he summons the toad, but it's for a bit of a guilty pleasure reason, because from the moment I start talking about Kashin Koji back on my Kryptonian Saiyan channel and some of the comments on Anime Balls Deep's channel where he and I did collaborations on Kashin Koji, a lot of people said that he was not using a toad summoning, and I like how this chapter confirms, and I like how Delta shows up, and I gotta again give props to Ikimoto. Again, I was very critical of the guy last week. Very critical. On this one, very good. Very good. Like, I like how you get this moment where you just see Delta's foot slam down and she's asking what's going on, and then you see this moment where Amado and Kashin Koji, they're turned around, they're looking at Delta, Delta's walking towards them. You get the moment where Koji jumps down, and then you actually see the follow through to where he actually lands on the ground and starts walking to confront Delta. I thought this was really good, and again, just seeing the different designs, these are all original designs by Ikimoto, and I've said from the very beginning when people bashed him for having the rounder faces and having the art just completely a hot mess in the early parts of the Boruto story, especially in the versus Momoshiki arc, I said when it comes to this guy, when it comes to designing characters, once we see more of his own original characters, you're gonna fucking love him. I love this right here, because again, just little small details like seeing how Delta's hair is just flaring out as she's walking, showing she's walking with authority, seeing the close-up of her eyes, and seeing how she has that eye, it looks like she's preparing to use the jutsu where she can break down the body on a cellular level. I thought that all this is cool. I thought the lines in the background showing just the intensity in the fact that Kashin Koji is molding chakra very, very quick. There's so many small things that he did in this instance, like adding a little bit of shading, having a close-up of Amado when he says go to sleep Delta, and you see just Delta's reaction, and again seeing those lines in the background showing how quickly all this is transpiring. Like, this is all good. This is all good. And again, the other thing that I do like is, again, it opens up the door that Amado might pull a double betrayal. Like, we have more moments where Ikimoto's showing us more of the small things. Now, I gotta say this much right here. I like the conversation that Mitsuki had with Sasuke on the rooftop. I thought that this was really, really good. And part of the reason why I like it is the fact that Mitsuki is showing you just how sharp he is. He's showing you just how sharp he is, and what he's doing is, it's like he's allowing Sasuke and Sakura to comfort Sarada and basically say like, hey, you did good. You did really good on this mission, but at the same time, we need you to gather your strength. If you're not at full strength, you're not gonna be able to help Boruto or whatever comes next. And you have this moment where Sarada's saying, what's happened to Boruto's body? Is he gonna be okay? And basically, you get this moment where Sasuke shuts it down, and Sarada, she takes heed to it, but you also get the moment where Sasuke's got that dire look on his face when Mitsuki says, I need to have a word with you. And he says like, hey, what's happening in Boruto, this ain't normal. And it isn't just clear to everyone, it's also really clear to me. People, I'm somebody who watches him very closely, and Mitsuki picked up on all this stuff. He said that when we fought that guy from Kar, he said that he's an Otsutsuki vessel for Momoshiki. And Sasuke, right when that happens, Sasuke just lets it all out the bag, and he says, I knew that Momoshiki was up to something. He gave Boruto this power for a reason. I didn't know why, but now I know for certain. Momoshiki's going to resurrect himself and he's gonna attempt to use Boruto's body. So I thought that this was cool. I thought that this was really cool, and I like how Sasuke confirms what all of us have been saying, which is basically like, to my eyes, Jigen is just a vessel for another being. And so I like how even though Sasuke didn't see Isshiki Otsutsuki talking to Jigen, Sasuke already put the pieces together. Sasuke knows that he's a vessel himself. So I like this right here. I like this right here because it's just showing you that Sasuke is going to have a bigger role to play in the future. And even Shikamaru says like, hey, Sasuke and Naruto are the only ones who can stand a chance against this Jigen guy. And I'm like, wait a second. Jigen just clapped both of them. You don't stand a chance against this guy Jigen. Now, the other thing I'll say is that, you know, when it comes to more of the artwork in this chapter, you know, one thing that Harrison Senpai and I talked about on Twitter was the fact that, you know, part of the reason why sometimes you get frustrated with Ikimoto is he uses squares and rectangles. Well, in this chapter, he switched it up. Like, I think that now you guys are starting to see, or at least I hope, that there's a little bit more than just doing squares and rectangles. There's a little bit more to doing than just slapping 3, 4, 5 panels at the most on a page. Several times throughout this chapter, we had multiple panels, and we actually saw him getting creative with this layout when it comes to the training of the Inoshika trio. I want you guys to look at the page where you have Chocho and she's doing the expansion, okay? Again, you see how all those lines are on there emphasizing just the rapid rate of the movement that she's got going on, and look at how the panel's actually drawn, right? So you have more of her body. You have more of her body on that left-hand side, and the way that the actual panel's drawn, the actual frame, you have more of it going towards the left side of that panel, almost because as if Chocho, because more of her body's on that side or is leaning on that side, the panel itself is starting to shift. And then the one right beneath it, when you have Inoji and he's getting ready to jump back, on the back end you see the human juggernaut boulder coming towards him because you have Chocho and she's rushing towards him. You see all those lines that are drawn going right towards her, emphasizing the speed that she's coming with, as well as the speed that Inoji's jumping back to. But again, more of the panel is angled back towards the left hand side, so it gives the impression that you have Inoji jumping towards the actual viewer. Like, that's really, really good. And again, when you look at the placement down on the bottom, right, you have, again, little small details where you have Inoji where he's jumping to the right at this point, and he's got the super beast scroll out and he's getting ready to use the jutsu. But again, the lines are drawn in the background to where now instead of being vertical, now they're horizontal. So it's just, again, emphasizing the speed that he's changed direction with. And what's so crazy about that is, again, the way that his body's drawn, it's almost like he's moving towards that back end of the panel. And when you get to the panel right next to it, you actually see his wrist, and you see the paintbrush in his wrist as he's making the actual cartoon beast mimicry. Like, that's really, really good. Little small touches like that. Part of the reason why you guys hear me harp on Ikimoto like that is I know Ikimoto can do this shit. I know he can do it. It's just one of those times, like, you can tell he had more time to work on this chapter than the last one. His ass got to work sooner. He got to work sooner. So I mean, I like this right here. I really like this moment right here. I thought the whole training match, I thought it was cool. The only thing that kind of got me a little bit is, like, I know that it's not required to wear the Chunin vest. I personally would have liked to have seen Shikadai with the Chunin vest, but you know, it is what it is. But you know, I like that moment right there. I like how Shikadai, even though the others are kind of just watching, they're not reacting, Shikadai takes lead of the situation. And it just shows you that when it comes to these car members in particular, when it comes to Amado, he's got a lot of intel on the Konoha ninja, okay? You know, I also thought that, you know, again, just having that crisis situation with Shikadai being held hostage, I thought that a lot of this was good. I like how, you know, you just see more and more emphasis being drawn on the characters' faces. Like, I thought that this was good. And again, even though he's using squares and triangles, the layout's a little bit better in this one. So I thought that he was maximizing some of those panels on there. In particular, like, you get this one page where you have Kawaki and he's basically agreeing to be put under extreme supervision. You got Boruto in a very small box right above that, Sumire in a very small box beneath it, and then all of a sudden you have Shikamaru, where Shikamaru's looking, he's like, holy shit, what the fuck is going on? Why is Ino contacting me? You see the intensity on which Ino is talking. It's not because she's straining to use the jutsu, but it's because of the severity of the situation, where you see the sweat drops on her face, how you see her with the eyebrows furrowed forward, how you have the lines across the top of the face and everything, like little small things like that. Like, this was good. And then when you get to Amado down on the bottom, where you see only one of his eyes and the other one's got the glare on it, and it's almost like he's got 1 foot in, 1 foot out, and it's being symbolized by the fact that you can only see one eye. I thought, again, this was really, really good. Little small touches like this. And I like how when everybody shows up, when Moegi uses the Earth style jutsu and she's able to trap this guy, you get this moment where Amado's like, look, that's all cool in theory, but if you keep pissing me off, I can blow this kid's head off. I don't need to actually use my hands to do it. So it lets you know that these bombs, they can be triggered just by a thought impulse. So again, it's just showing you that, like, Amado's scientific ninja tools on a completely different level. And even Katasuke states, like, hey, like, this science is way beyond anything we've done. This is the third time they stated that. So I thought that this was good to actually see that moment right there. And I like how Amado's like, look, like, you know, it's good that Naruto's alive. So this lets me know that, hey, Boro's been defeated, and more importantly, I made the right decision coming here. I'm willing to defect and to join Konoha, but I need you guys to give me protection, and in return, I'll give you all the information that you need. So I mean, overall, this was a good chapter. This was a really good chapter. There wasn't a lot of action there, but the plot still moved forward. Ikimoto, again, I gotta give him credit here. He had some panels where the layout was vastly improved. He also used more than his usual 3 to 5 fucking panels in each page. So I like this. I like this a lot. It's, again, the guy is stepping it up. So it lets me know either the guy got assistance or the guy actually got to start work on the chapter a bit sooner. And given the fact he's not having to research, he's not having to come up with the story, he literally just gets a layout of the story. He's got to draw it. I'm glad that, you know, Ikimoto got on his shit on this one. It's a lot better than what it usually is. So overall, if I had to give this chapter a score, I normally don't do this, but if I had to give it a score, I'd say I give this chapter a 7.5, maybe an 8 out of 10. So I put it as a good chapter, a very good chapter, not excellent, but the plot development at the end with Amado basically saying, like, hey, I'm willing to join, that's a very good way to end the chapter off. So my chapter question to you guys, are you okay with Amado basically being the focus of this chapter and basically being used as a cliffhanger, or did you want to see Kashin Koji versus Jigen in this chapter? Which one did you want to see, and why or why not do you like the way that the story took itself in this chapter? But as always, guys, if you like anything I had to say, don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, and share. Thank you so much for watching to the end. Have an awesome day, guys.